Boo! Welcome back to Ox Tools. I'm Tom. So rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. Forgive me for not putting out a video for a couple of weeks. I've been pretty busy at work. We hired some new folks that I'm responsible for, and I have a couple of new projects that I'm working on at work. So I've been kind of to here with work stuff and pretty knackered when I get home. So anyway, I think we got things on a kind of a even keel now, and we can go back to shooting some videos. For those of you that follow me in some of the other things that I do, I'm writing a monthly column for Cutting Tool Engineering. So check it out. You'll see some stuff you don't see on the channel in a little different format. So anyway, check it out, Cutting Tool Engineering. Right now, I know there's some meatloaf lovers out there that are dying for a batch of meatloaf. So I think I got a pretty good pan of meatloaf here. So let's dig in and check it out. All right, this first one is pretty cool. This comes to us from a friend of mine up north from here, Mr. Mark Clayton, and he contacted me, had a couple things he wanted to horse trade, but he said that he was including a surprise in the box for me, and this was a surprise. And I have to tell you, when I opened the box up, I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at that! I've never seen a hammer like that." And so, you know, curious cat Tom says, "Let's check this out, see what this hammer's for." So he gave me a little clue. So I dug around in the web, and it turns out that this is a very specific hammer. And I'll turn it around so you can kind of see it. And it's 5 pounds, and all of it. It's got this really, and I hope you can see that, it's got this little swan logo on it. It's just a sweet little icon there. You know, guys, if you want to brand yourself or brand your name or whatever it is, you know, simple is really good, and that's just a beautiful little maker's mark there. Now, I wasn't able to reference that swan to anything, so maybe some of you internet miners out there can root that out, what that is. I tried swan brand and goose brand and things like that, and related to tools and whatnot. I didn't come up with anything. So there's that little logo, and hopefully you guys can see that. And so if anybody can figure out what company that is, that'd be great. Now what we have here, this is called a dog's head truing hammer, okay, as in woof woof dog. And what it's for is, lumber mills, they are constantly cycling through saw blades, circular saw blades, bandsaw blades, just cutting blades of all sorts, right? Well, these circular saw blades, when they sharpen them or, when they're cutting, they get hot, so they tend to warp a little bit. And there was a little dude, Mr. Dude. Dude had a hammer, and he had a special anvil called a Sawyer's anvil, which is basically kind of a rectangular block, maybe a foot high or something like that, 300 millimeters high and 150 millimeters wide, something like that. And he had this little hammer. So what he would do is they had an arbor that they could turn or support the blade with. And what he would do is very carefully, in a prescribed manner, in a prescribed area, right, he would tap on the saw blade and actually true the saw blade and straighten it out, which is pretty cool. And it's kind of akin to flame straightening a little bit, but it's a mechanical stretching. So they'd flip the blade back and forth, and then they would spin it. And the idea is that it's not cup shaped, it's running true, and it cuts real good. So this guy had a full-time job at the sawmill. Anyway, this is an example of a saw truing hammer, and there's something to this angle. So I imagine that I don't know all the ins and outs of it, and the handle's broken on this one, and this is the handle's kind of, the holes swaged off center a little bit, so this has got a really nice kind of a patina and history on it. I'll probably clean a little bit of the rust off just carefully, but I want it to show its age too. So anyway, Mark, thank you very much. That's a really cool hammer, unique octagon dog's head truing hammer. So thank you, sir. All right, this next one, a friend of mine came over. This is a longtime friend of mine. I've known him for, I don't know, 30 plus years, and we like to joke around that we nerd out together, right? And he's a technology buff just like me. And anyway, so we've been trying to get together for a couple of weeks, and finally he came up, and I had a big big bag of books and goodies for him, and he had some stuff for me. Well, this is one of the things he had for me, which is kind of neat. And some of you guys probably are familiar with these, and these are this Svord with the umlauts peasant knife, okay? And these are made in New Zealand. And it's just this kind of dog simple, kind of utility knife, right? And what's interesting is, they're 20 bucks or something like that, so they're real cheap, and you can adjust the pivot so that you get, kind of the feel that you want. But I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but a lot of blades these days are made out of stainless steel, right? And sure, there's some good ones, and there's some better ones, and then there's some kind of bad ones. Well, this is carbon steel here, and yes, it will rust. But one neat thing about carbon steel is typically it holds an edge real well. So and this has got I'd say a pretty coarse grind on it. It's nice and sharp right now, and not quite. It's got a rough edge right now, so it would. Oh yeah, there's some hairs on there. Okay, so it was shaven a little bit. Anyway, it's kind of neat. I'm going to try it out and see how I like it. And I guess you could put a lanyard on that. Anyway, Svord peasant knife, and thanks, John. I appreciate that. Good to see you when you came up here. All right, this next one. So I was at the art supply store, and I was, I'm a pen and pencil buff, I guess you would call it. And anyway, I've been looking at these. I've looked at these before, but I had need of a very, very small tipped marker, okay? And what these are, this is an archival quality ink, tiny tipped felt pen, okay? Now I'm sure all you guys have run into this, your good old Sharpie, right? The tip tends to get kind of blunt, right? Okay, so if you're like me, you get this style here that has a micro tip on the other side, right? Okay, and it leaves a line like that. Then, if you really want to go for it, you can go full nerd and get one of these microns. Now this one is, and don't ask me what this means, but this is 0.2 of a millimeter, the tip, which is about 0.008 for us, the American folks out there. So let's put a line down with this, and hopefully you guys can see it. Okay. That's a pretty darn fine line, okay? Let's try light pressure. Yeah, it's about the same width, okay? So, I don't know if you can really appreciate how small that tip is. I think this is the smallest they sell. Not 100% positive of that. But anyway, it's a marker tip, so you can do small layouts, and it's almost as good as a scriber for materials that you don't want to scratch, okay? So that's the key. So, I wouldn't say this is great for everyday use, kind of everyday carry like you would for the venerable Sharpie, right? But you want to do some fine layout and not scratch, this is probably a good choice right here. Anyway, they're, I don't know, $3 or $4, something like that. They don't give them away, but you're not going to be using it to write letters to your your loved ones. Okay, Micron archival quality ink pen. Well, I managed to sneak out to the flea market the other day and picked up a couple of a couple interesting items. It was actually it was just a really nice day out there, and we had a nice walk, and You know, I picked up a few items too. So, okay, you know, whenever I see a 7/16 drill bit that doesn't look like it's been used, and you know, and it's a quarter, I get it. Okay, I'm not a rich man, but I don't walk past cheap tools too often. So, and then this is a pair of Utica pliers, and I believe these have been modified, but whoever modified them, oh, you know what? Maybe somebody that's got a Utica catalog. These are Utica 22s. I think these were some kind of needle nose, perhaps. You know, gosh, it really looks like a factory grind on the tip. So maybe that's the way these came. But this kind of parrot or this parrot beak or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what that curvature you might call, but they close up really nice at the tip, and they're slightly rounded, which kind of appealed to me. So anyway, these are some old Utica pliers and these are a couple bucks. Actually, it's been a couple weeks since I bought all this stuff, so I think this was $10, and I'm pretty sure this was $6 because I bought two of them. So anyway, just a nice set of pliers to go in my plier drawer, and if you guys are good, I'll open my plier drawer and put these in there, and you guys can see just how how much of a tool problem I have. Okay, so all right, so Utica pliers. Hey, another Utica item, and what this is a adjustable torque driver. Okay, so you can set the torque somehow. Oh, there it is. Okay, you gotta. That's right. It's got a lock ring on it. Okay, so you gotta slide the lock ring, and this is graduated in inch pounds here. Pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah. Not inch ounces, so inch pounds, and it goes up to 30 inch pounds, okay? But it's got a 1/4 inch square drive on it, so you can put sockets on it, or you can put, you know, hex bits and things like that. If you got to buy one of these, watch out, because this is probably $200 here, okay? So if you see them laying on the ground and they appear to work for $10, jump on them, because when you get into real precision stuff and complicated assemblies and mechanical systems, it's important to secure fasteners properly and uniformly. Okay, so actually, let's release that. Let's do the right thing, and we'll release the spring. And this one says it's only good for clockwise. So this is the goes on to tool, and there's a goes off a tool. Oh, a Navy calibration program. So this somebody took this off some aircraft carrier or something like that. So they won't be able to tighten the propeller now. So okay, and then this last item here, the guy had a stack of these blades, $6 a piece. These go on a 4-inch Makita 4-inch grinder. And I make bushings for them so I can put them on things like cordless circular saws and other things like that. You know, diamond stuff is pretty readily available these days, and man, it works good on certain kinds of materials. So anyway, it's just a nice buy. I don't know where he got them, and I don't really care, but anyway, I bought a pile of those from him. So now, you remember I mentioned, you know, it's hard to leave, you know, nice tools laying on the ground at the flea market for 50 cents or $1 or even $5, right? So here's what happens when you have that mentality, is you end up with a drawer like this. And, you know, I see all these guys with these foam inserts for their drawers, right? You know, and they got all the little cutouts for the pliers and all that stuff, and it just looks wonderful, right? And I'm like, you know what? I'd have to get rid of, like, I don't know, 5,000 pounds of tools to do that. You would need, your whole shop would be storage space, right? So I guess I would be considered the dense pack mode here, and but you know, you might say, well, who the heck needs that many pliers, right? Well, I don't know. That's a good question, but all of these are a little bit different. So I tend to look for kind of unique features and different configurations when I'm looking at these tools, right? And oh, I think we talked about that one at some point. A viewer sent me that. I can't remember who, so I apologize. Got some nice knurling on it. But, you know, all these have kind of unique, okay, so those tips are very similar to these, kind of, right? All right, rounded and tapered, but they're skinnier, and it's got more reach, and it's got a really sweet Art Deco kind of pattern on it. Those are old Craftsman there. And so, you know, tools they're fun to collect, and you know, it's enjoyable. So this is, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. A friend of mine makes tools and fixtures for an electronics plier company called Tronics. Okay, and that's Tronics with a T, and they make there's the name Tronics. Okay. And they make some really, really sweet cutters, okay? And he's helped them with fixtures to bend these, fixtures to grind them, and they make some of the really the nicest high-tech instrument maker type cutters and electronic stuff, medical electronics, all that, pliers and tools. They don't give them away, but they're really nice. So Tronics, look them up. Anyway. There's my, you know, this, I don't drink, I don't smoke, and and I don't gamble, so I spend my money on tools. So anyway, well, I do drink a little bit, I guess. While we're on the subject of diamond tools, this is one that I picked up recently. I was at Lowe's, and I noticed I went in the saw blade section or whatever. I was wandering around and I saw these guys here, and I'm a big Lennox fan, and I have a bunch of their hacksaws. I love their blades, and anyway, I saw these, and this is a diamond cutting wheel. Now this is kind of designed to go on a 4-inch grinder, and what I did was I just made a little bushing to adapt it to this cordless DeWalt saw, and there's the that's the packaging there. And this was, I want to say it's like 14 bucks or something like that. It wasn't particularly expensive. But the other day, you know, we were grooving those cast iron laps, right? And I was trying to use a carbide blade, and it was a little dodgy. So somebody said, "Hey, you should try a diamond blade." And I'm like, "Oh, you know, that's a really good idea," because they use these for cutting cast iron pipe. So that was a good call, and I don't remember who suggested that, but it was a good suggestion. So I got one, adapted it to this, and I made a couple of cuts, and it's a sweet cut. So this is the right way to do the grooving for if you want to cut cast iron, or I don't know, anything that's really hard. You can probably slice through tool steel with this too. So anyway, worked good on this, and there's the groove I cut, and it was just cream cheese. So anyway, Lennox Metal Max Diamond Blade from Lowe's, about 14 bucks. Check it out. All right, this next deal here is pretty cool. This comes to us from a viewer, and his name is John Murdoch, and he's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And actually, I like this. Okay, I'll shut up now. This is actually about 15 pages or more of describing his tool bench, and it's actually really cool. And it's just a nice job, so it's worth showing. And of course, he's got extremely good taste. Now, I'm wondering though, you know, if that sticker's actually stuck down there, and maybe he just pulls that off and puts one of Adam's stickers there when he writes a letter to Adam, and then one of Keith's stickers when he talks to Keith, etc., etc. Anyway, John, I'm just pulling your leg. So what John did is he's a jewelry maker, and he built this tool cart, and you know, he stole the idea from Adam Savage of Mythbusters, but he went through. The interesting part was he went through a bunch of iterations on getting it set up so that it functioned for his workflow, right? And it's, you know, there's something to be said for that, is kind of optimizing your space depending on what you're doing. You know, if you work on clocks and watches, or you work on jewelry, or, you know, instrument repair and all that, you know, dialing in your space and keeping it organized, okay? So what this represents to me is efficiency, right? Is, you know, he puts this pair of pliers back in the same spot every time, so when he puts his hand out, you know, he can get a hold of those. And so, you know, if you're making your living doing this kind of work, you know, organizing your workspace and optimizing it instead of the, you know, the teenager pile of tools and don't know where anything is kind of a method. So anyway, that's picture number one. Here's picture number two. Oh, look at this guy. I mean, he's buttering me up here. So that's a cool looking saw there, a little jeweler's saw. I don't know what brand that is, but it's pretty sexy looking there. So there's a good job for you plasma cutter and laser cutter guys, right? You can make some really spiffy scroll saw. So now this is the standard one that, you know, all us common Joes have. It slides along this beam and it's got a bunch of rinky-dink set screws and stuff. This, you actually flex the frame to tension the blade there, which is pretty cool. And it's just, come on, I mean, that's just nicer to look at, right? So that's pretty cool. That's a little brayer there, hearing protection, okay. Yeah, oh, you know what, that doesn't look like it's stuck down to me, so. Heat gun, all this. So, you know, he spent a lot of time organizing this thing and, you know, done a nice job of it. And obviously he doesn't have enough tools because there's still airspace around him, okay? So that's how I tell if you have enough tools, is you're starting to stack them, right? It's not a single layer. And oh yeah, definitely you need to get some more, John, you need to get some more shears. This drawer is looking a little light here, okay? So yeah. And there's some files, okay? Got nice handles. These file handles are really nice. I like those. They have this kind of a rubbery cush grip, so much better than the hard plastic. So they're less fatiguing. And take it from somebody that does a little bit of filing, right? That's kind of important, especially as you get older and your hands get kind of creaky and all that. So okay, what else we got here? Oh, hammers. Okay, he's got a nice collection of hammers, and he's gone so far as to kind of separate them. Now, when you're doing jewelry work, okay, when you're doing jewelry work, you know, these are all polished faces here, right? So you don't want those clinking together and marking anything up, although you probably wouldn't be doing anything with the sides of those, okay? But this is a nice way to keep them separate, so each one has its own space and it drops in there really nicely and the others don't interfere with it. So trust me, I have that problem, so mine interfere with one another. Okay. Another drawer there, pretty cool. And more pliers, lots of pliers. I wonder if he has any of those. I mentioned those Tronics. I'm just looking through the selection here. Yeah, I don't think any of those are Tronics, so just looking at them. So John, that's a pretty cool tool cart. And folks, you know, all those woodchucks out there, this is, you know, this is pretty straightforward stuff to build. And man, I tell you, it increases your work efficiency greatly. So John, thanks for sending that in. I appreciate it. And I hope you like it. Some of you guys may remember that I picked up an Autocollimator a while back off eBay. I've been kind of stalking around on eBay looking for one of these, and this is a Hilger Watts, which is an English company that was purchased by Taylor Hobson in the 60s, I think. So this is an Autocollimator, and the way it works is this is a light source here. Light goes in, goes out, comes back from a reflector, and you measure differences in the tilt of the reflector, okay? So you can do some interesting measurements with these. You can measure straightness. With some accessories, you can measure perpendicularity. You can measure flatness, things like that, in 2 axes, because this actually rotates. screech. So it rotates this way. So when it's in this attitude here, we're measuring tilts this way, okay? And then when we lay it down like this, obviously those would be tilts that way, okay? So you can do comparative stuff. Anyway, I needed a mirror for this thing, and so I've been, once again, kind of stalking on eBay, but man, there's some other people that must need a mirror too, let me tell you, because I've missed out on a few. So I was whining about it at work, and I have a friend at work, his name is Jim, and he's a he's a friend, but he's an enabler. So it's the tool equivalent of a drug pusher. And so he and I, we have these show and tells, and we bring tools into work, and he shows me his, and I show him mine, and his is always better than mine. So he's got it pretty bad. So he's single. He's, I don't know, he's 70 something years old now, and he's been single his whole life. He lives in an apartment, and it's packed to the gills. It's packed to the gills, and he's buying more. So a man after my own heart. So anyway, he comes in one day. He goes, "Oh, hey, I got something for you." And lo and behold, he brings me this. Okay, and what this is a Autocollimator mirror. Okay, and gee, it's made by Hilger Watts even. Now this is a lowrider version here. Ideally, these are on the same optical axis here. Okay, so we'll make a little riser for this, and that has little feet on it that have a particular spacing. And this actually, I think, can lay on its back too. This particular one. Okay, so we'll get it on center and make it so that we can use it. Okay. And so this is the reflector, just to remind you guys, and then little tilts in this. This measures tiny little tilts. This will resolve tenths of an arc second. So that's pretty accurate stuff. Pretty cool. Anyway, Jim gave me this, and I, geez, thanks, Jim. And he said, "Oh, I got two of them, so I don't need two. You can have that one." I'm like, "Great." Well, while I was stalking around on eBay, I finally found I got one. And it's not the perfect one, but this has a special use. And this is another Hilger Watts, and it came with a box, which is kind of nice. And then, so this one's a little different. This one's a little closer to being the right height. But what you use this one for is it's got a round base, so you can actually do multiple measurements by reflecting off of this, for example, into this one. So we can look in here and we can measure tilts along an angle without moving the instrument. So so it's kind of a turning mirror is what it is. And these are very flat mirrors, better than a quarter of a wavelength, and they're what's called a first surface mirror. And what that means is that the reflective material is on the front surface, so the light doesn't have to travel through any glass and get bent going through the glass to find the reflective material. So it's a first surface mirror that's very flat. So anyway, I got a mirror, so we're going to start playing around with this a little bit, and I've got some ideas for some videos to illustrate how to use this and what it's good for and how simple it is to use. So stay tuned, guys. It's going to be some fun stuff. Get it backwards. So this next one is pretty cool. Actually, it's more than pretty cool. It's super cool. It's a rectangle of black walnut. There's something in it though. Whoop, whoop. It's a Canadian black walnut, no less. And this comes to us from a company that's in Canada that is actually becoming involved with the YouTube machinists and Instagram kind of machine tool folks. And this is a company called Core Print Patterns. There's a name there, Core Print Patterns. They have a website, coreprintpatterns.com. And this is a gentleman named Jonathan Hornell Kennedy. Anyway, Jonathan reached out to me and said, "Give me your address, I have something to send you." And I You know, who can refuse that, right? Anyway, and you guys may have seen one of these, and what it is it's a cast iron straight edge. Okay, so Core Print Patterns and Jonathan, they actually made this pattern for this straight edge. Actually, they did finite element analysis on their ribbing and whatnot, which was pretty cool, and they showed that on Instagram. And then they sent a few of these out to some of the other, some folks in the YouTube community. And the idea is that it's a scraping project. And let's pull it out of here. And Jonathan, this is, you know, I love the box, and you get style points for a really sweet box, okay? But you lose 1 point for old guys getting these out of the box. So it's hard to get out of the box. And but it's a gorgeous box. Look at that thing. And they have a big Mazak mill, and I'm pretty sure they milled this piece of wood on the Mazak. It's got the characteristic little patterns in the bottom from the pocketing routine or whatever. Anyway, there's the thing, and parallel 001. I don't know if this is the very first one. Not sure. But it's pretty cool. So let's set this aside for a sec. Jonathan, that's an awesome box. Okay, and let's take a look at this. So it's 24 inches, and you know, 620 millimeters, 3 inches tall, and he asked if I wanted it machined because I don't have this much capacity on my mill, and I said, yeah, sure, go ahead and machine it. So he dusted off both sides, and I think it's better than a thou parallel over the length of that. So the idea is that you take it from this rough machined, quote unquote rough machined state, and scrape it and match it to a master flat plane, like a surface plate, something like that. But I think I'm going to do something a little different with this, since everybody else is doing scraping, and I'm kind of been a lapping junkie lately. So the other thing you can do with lapping is you can create straight edges too, and using the three the three plate method, you use 3 straight edges, and you well, hey, see, look, you got bent fingers, right? You lap those together and they match up more, and then when you introduce the third one, it verifies the other 2. So once you have 3, you can actually create a straight line too, okay, or a straight edge. So maybe what we'll do is we'll create a lap that's like this, you know, same width and probably a little bit longer than this. Or maybe the same length. I got to think about it a little bit. And we have 2 surfaces here, 1, 2, and if we have 1 lap, now we have 3 surfaces. So what we should be able to do is lap this into a really, really, really precision straight edge. And this is it's a different technique than scraping. Okay, scraping is cool and it has its place. For gauges and instruments, generally a lap surface is even more accurate. Now, you wouldn't necessarily lap something like this. You know, you're sliding this around on a surface plate or on a machine and whatnot, so having that bearing area on there, it probably slides a little easier, okay? But if you want to compare another straight edge, okay, say you have a really long ruler like this, right? Okay, that's pretty good actually. You can look at the light that comes through with a precision straight edge and judge how far off it is, or you can fish it with feelers and stuff like that. Anyway, just to be different, I may lap this and do that. But Jonathan, this is just beautiful. I mean, this thing weighs about, I don't know, 25 pounds, something like that. Nice, beautiful cast iron. He does sell these, so if you guys want to take on a scraping project or whatever, he sells the blank castings, okay? And I don't know if he offers them rough machined or not, but you can check on the coreprintpatterns.com website and scope it out. So, Jonathan, appreciate the really nice gift, and that's very thoughtful, and hopefully I'll meet you at the bash or some other time when I travel back east. So thank you again, sir. I really appreciate it, and sorry it took so long to get to this. This much deserved thank you. So I just wanted to show this thing again. There was no finish on it when Jonathan sent it, so I used a little bit of this Renaissance microcrystalline wax. And this is good as just a general finish and preservative, anti-corrosion on pretty much anything. Approved by the Queen, so Queen of England, excuse me. Anyway, I just gave it a little rub down with some of this wax, and it's just like absolutely stunning now. So it's gorgeous. Anyway, Jonathan, thanks again for providing a nice protective box for this. All right, we got some books on this, the next one here, and these came all the way from New Zealand, Palmerston, North New Zealand, and these were sent by a viewer named Richard Ashman. And anyway, Richard's an engineer and machinery buff. He watches all the YouTube machinists, and decided he wanted to send some books that he had come across. Anyway, Richard, thank you very much for the books. These are great. And for those of you that don't know, these are well, one of them anyway, is this international correspondence, international textbook company. It was like a correspondence course, and they had literally hundreds of these books on kind of single subjects. This one's on measuring instruments. And I showed, I had borrowed one of these from a fellow a couple of months ago, and I had shown it on a Meatloaf. It has this kind of marbled paper in the inside. And I think one of the things I showed in here, which was pretty cool because I'd never seen one before, was this weird hardness tester. And of course, my friend John Marcus chimes in on email and says, "Oh yeah, those are pretty common." And here's a book. Here's a book on them. Anyway, of course I can't find it when I want to find it. But this thing's just loaded with these lovely hand-drawn, illustrations, and they're just great. And I always say that, but it's true. Anyway, this kind of is these are relatively inexpensive to buy. I mean, you find them in bookstores. They're $3 or $4 or $5 a piece, and there's literally hundreds of these to collect. So I don't think I've ever seen anybody that's had a full collection of these. So that would make an interesting endeavor there. Anyway, so one of them's this is the measuring instruments. Okay, and what was the this is 1939, okay, pretty cool. And then this guy here, this is workshop technology, modern workshop technology, and this is an English book. And okay, Christchurch, so it was in New Zealand. And I'm trying to read the date upside down here, and probably on here. 1950, okay, 1950. And this has got some interesting stuff, general workshop stuff. This would be like a textbook that you might follow along in school, where they talk about machine tool operations and threading and gear hobbing and whatnot. And they got some cool old British machines. Victoria, shapers, horizontal mill, vertical mill, and grinders, Churchill grinders, stuff like that. Stuff you don't see in the U.S. very much. You don't see that equipment in the U.S. very much. Now, I do have one page flagged here that's kind of minor interest, and it has to do with the conversion between inch and metric. Now, keep in mind that it's not an exact conversion, and now they've made it. They've fixed it legally at 25.4 centimeters, millimeters to the inch. But the actual conversion is something other than that, and they're actually showing it here, 25.39956. So where this becomes very interesting is, and that's still actually the conversion, is when you're actually comparing master standards between countries. And they have to take this into account a little bit, and it's kind of an interesting process. So, you know, how do you calibrate your master inch against the international meter? You know, it's all done with wavelengths of light now, but it used to be pretty challenging, I think. So, anyway, Richard, thank you very much for the books and the little ruler. This ruler has had a pretty tough life here, I think. So you can just barely read the markings on it. Anyway, Richard, thank you for taking the time to package that up and send those books up here. It's much appreciated, and thank you very much. All right, this one is this is a little horse trading expedition here, and a viewer contacted me, and he wanted to send something into the show, and you know, so we spoke on email, and anyway, I said, well, gee, that's a really nice thing, you know. What do you need, right? You know, sometimes I ask this question. He's a young guy, and this is Trevor Hoffman, and he's in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And anyway, he's going to school there, and he's at CMU, and he's studying mechanical engineering. Anyway, he likes the show, and he likes engineering stuff. So, and I think he's been, along with other folks, have been enjoying the lapping videos. So, and that's exactly what this is. This is a lap. It's a very special one, and we'll talk about it in just a sec. Anyway, Trevor was up for a horse trade, so I said, yeah, sure, I could use that. I could use that lap, and this is a 6-inch, 150 millimeter diamond impregnated lap. Okay, although it looks basically smooth. This is this is 3000 grit here, so it's pretty fine. And looking at it, it looks like it needs to be recharged to me, and just kind of eyeballing it. But I did try it. It still works. So anyway, Trevor wanted to do a horse trade. So anyway, he sent this, and I packed up some stuff, and that's going to go to Trevor and push him along in his engineering career. So he sent me this lap, and this lap is made by a company called AbLap, and the body of the lap is aluminum, and then it's lapped, and then they actually impregnate the surface with diamond. Okay, so this, it's all secret process. They don't tell you how they make them and whatnot, but I have a pretty good idea how they make these. So the idea is that you basically lubricate this with something that keeps the material that's being cut away in floating, okay, in suspension, and then you can lap on top of this. Okay, so this is a fixed abrasive process. The abrasive greens are not rolling around in there; they're actually fixed to this plate. So this is like a very super flat piece of sandpaper. Okay, and I actually have. Of course I have one, right? I have one of my own here, and this is 600 grit, a little bit smaller, and I don't know if you can see the surface looks kind of, it's not reflective like this one. It's a little dull. This is 600 grit, this is 3000 mesh here, or 600 mesh, 3000 mesh here. 4-inch diameter, 6-inch diameter. So anyway, actually I was using this the other day to lap some, actually, you know what? I'm just gonna go get those. So this is an example of the kinds of things that you can lap on there. So this is a face seal here, okay, and this is one that's kind of worn out. And this is solid carbide here, so that's tungsten carbide, and this is fixed, and there's a rotating member that's spring loaded that presses against this that forms a seal here, okay, and the material on the other side of this was carbon in this case, and I had two of them, so one of them I relapped, and there's the relapped one there, okay? And that was done on these little guys right here. Now, I did some roughing work, because it's got some pretty good grooves in it, and to take it down and make a nice plane and get rid of the deep grooves, and then I lapped it to, and this is a couple millionths flatness here. This, quarter wave or eighth wave, something like that. Now it's still got some little scratches in it. That's actually right off of the 600 grit. So I was going to do a little bit on the 3000 mesh and see if I can get some of those fine scratches out of there. Anyway, Trevor, thank you very much for sending that into the show. That's pretty awesome. And there's a package headed your way soon with some goodies in it for you. So good luck with your engineering career, and thanks for doing a little horse trading there, buddy. Okay. This one is another horse trading session here. This comes to us from Columbus, Ohio. A gentleman named Paul Rothrock. Excuse me. Sorry about that, Paul. Anyway, Paul's been watching the lapping videos and said, "Hey, you need another lapping plate?" And he sent me a picture of it, and I said, "Yeah, sure. What do you want for it?" And so we worked out a little horse trade, and here's what he sent. And it's pretty cool, cast iron. It's a nice little size here. So it's about 12 inches, 300 millimeters by 210 or 205 millimeters this way. And that's 8 inches for us Imperial folks. It's pretty old from the looks of it, and it's got some interesting maker's marks on it. So let's kind of check that out. And here's the guy's name, Whedon. Okay, Whedon's, and he added an S, so as is possessive. Okay, and then he used a center punch and he stamped a W in here, and then. What's really cool, I'll flip it over here. Let's see if we can see it here. And he stamped his name in the bottom too. My little pointer here. And his name was Paul D. Whedon. And my guess is this might have been a project that he scraped and slotted and whatnot. Don't know. Hard to say. Like I said, it looks pretty old. Now, the other thing that's really interesting here, and I'll bring you in real close to look at this, is this. It says pattern property of, and then it's got a company name that's very difficult to read. So let's zoom in on that a little bit and take a look at it, and you guys can help me out with that. Maybe somebody recognizes that particular name. I'm not going to say it. I don't want to preload anybody. So let's check that out. All right. So there's the marks underneath. So it says pattern property of, and this looks like AF RERRLESS. Now this is where it gets a little tricky right in here, right? I suppose, looking at it from this direction, this could be an H too. So HER here, Herless, HERRRLES. I don't know. It's kind of tough, and be kind of interesting to that could be an H. I thought it was an R initially, but now that I was looking at it from this direction, it kind of looks like an H. HER. HER, I don't know. And that's definitely an LESS. So anyway, maybe somebody recognizes that. Have no idea what part of the country. So Paul is in Ohio, so there might be some logic that this is from that area, somewhere near Columbus, Ohio, and a company that did pattern making or iron castings, or was just a large manufacturing plant. I don't know. I'm going to say quite a while ago for this type of construction here. So, 30s or even the early 1900s maybe. Okay. Anyway, Paul, thank you very much. This is a very cool gift, and package headed your way with your trade goodies in it. So thank you very much.